Southern California drivers have experienced it. 1 minute, you're driving down the street, and the next, you are blocked by a delivery or ride-hail vehicle that is double parked. Well, a lot of work is being done right now to figure out the role that curbs can play in making traffic flow more efficiently. Where commerce meets the curb is the subject of this week's Along for the Ride. And Spectrum News 1, Sue Carpenter is with us now. There was an actual conference in downtown LA last week called Curbivore. It was all about curb space. Yeah. What is it? What were you doing there?
So Curbivore is pretty much exactly like it sounds. It was a conference for all the different players involved in using the curb. So you have the city that owns the curb. You have all these different delivery companies that are using the curb, whether they're dropping off, picking up passengers or packages. You have all these mobility startups that are trying to convince those delivery companies to use their kooky three-wheeled vehicles or little sidewalk robots, and then you have the tech companies that are trying to make sense of it all and figure out like who's using the curb, when are they using it, what are they using it for. And I was there just because I've been hearing for several years now that LA DOT is trying to figure out how to digitize the curb and monetize the curb, and I was just trying to figure out exactly where do we stand with all of that.
I mean, digitizing the curb, monetizing it, like I still can't wrap my head around that, but I think it says a lot about where we're at in this particular moment. Like here in 2023, why is the curb so important?
Well, it's getting important because if you even thought about the curb, chances are you were just driving around trying to figure out where you could pull over and park your car, or you were about to step off the curb and get into a bus. Well, over the last 5-10 years, we all know that transportation has changed so much. So now the curb is being used for Amazon delivery vehicles, which seem to always be blocking my path every single time I leave my house. You have all these different ride-hail companies that are picking up, dropping off people dropping off food for other people. You are checking out bicycles and scooters from kiosks that are often on the curb. And so the city is like, wait a minute, like there is so much happening here. A lot of these companies, they're causing traffic congestion. You know, they're causing traffic to back up that's generating emissions. We need to figure out what's going on. So one of the people who was speaking at the conference was the general manager of the LA Department of Transportation, Connie Llanos, and here's what she had to say.
The days where cities and the private sector were opposing each other really should be behind us, because we're all interested in creating transportation that is more seamless for everyone.
Yeah, so basically they're just looking to figure out what they should do because they can't do business as usual anymore. And so now you're seeing the advent of all these different like curb management companies that are popping up, which is something that, you know, most people haven't even heard of. Like, what is curb management, right?
Yeah, well, let's talk about it because there's an app for that, right? If you got to manage the curb, there's companies out there, a couple startups. This is all that they're doing now for cities. What are they doing?
Yeah, so I was talking to one of these startups. They're based in Los Angeles. They're called Automotus, and they are working with the city of Santa Monica on their zero emissions delivery zone, which you and I spoke about just 2 years ago. They're also working with the city of Los Angeles. But going to the Santa Monica project, what they do is they use cameras and they're positioned in different spots around the city, mostly angled toward these different loading zones. And then they can tell what vehicles are pulling in there, and then they can figure out how much time they're spending, and then they're charging them the longer time that they spend, the more they have to pay the city for using that zone. And what that's doing is it's moving the traffic out more quickly so that you don't have as much double parking. This company is also working with the city of Pittsburgh. That's the data that they shared with me. They said that it's reduced double parking by 40%, which is pretty incredible because I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm encountering double parking with all these different delivery vehicles pretty much every single time I leave the house.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and you know what that footage reminded me of, Sue? It's like those parking lots where it has the red and the green lights to show you which spaces, but that actually seems to work, unlike every garage I know that's ever had this red and green lights.
Yeah.
You showed us Santa Monica. What about here in the city of LA?
Yeah, so Los Angeles is working with that same company on a pilot project that is in one very specific part of the city right now. It's in the Arts District. They are using 8 different cameras just to sort of get a sense of what's going on. They're not monetizing, they're just analyzing. They're just looking at who's using it, what they're using it for, when they're using it. And, you know, after that panel where Connie Yanos was speaking, I just pulled her aside and I said, you know, what is the end game here? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And she said that they're trying to incentivize all these different vehicles that they don't have any control over from these private companies that are making these deliveries to do the right thing and use the loading zones properly so that they're not disturbing, you know, or backing up the traffic. Eventually, they will want to be probably monetizing this, and how they want to use the money is pretty interesting. They actually want to be putting that back into supporting public transportation for people who can't even afford to use these delivery systems, and possibly even use it to help create solutions for homelessness issues, which is also a transportation issue. This pilot that is currently only in the Arts District is going to be expanded over the next 12, 18 months in the city of Los Angeles with 100 cameras. So it is coming eventually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which has me worried that footage of my terrible attempts at parallel parking could be seen by everyone, but I'm sure that's not what these cameras are actually doing. What are these cameras actually doing?
It's really interesting. So when you think of a camera, you're thinking it's just observing something, right? Well, these have something called computer vision technology, where they're not just observing what's happening at the curb, they're actually analyzing what's happening at the curb. They can tell if it is a delivery vehicle or a passenger vehicle. They can tell if it is a gas-powered car or a zero-emissions car. They can tell the make, the model. If it's a delivery van, they can actually identify what the logo is on the side of that van. Is it Amazon? Is it UPS? And then they can use all this data, and then they can submit it to the city, and then the city can charge these companies. These companies are, in theory, supposed to be registering with the city to be paying for using the curb space, but that is basically how those cameras work. I was asking her about the privacy issues.
Yeah.
You know, because that's a lot of data that they're collecting, a lot of footage. And she told me that, you know, yes, they have this video footage that is able to see people's faces, able to capture license plate information, but once they hand it over to the city of Santa Monica, they're blurring out that information. And she also said that once the city has charged these companies for using the loading zone, gotten their payment, they are getting rid of the data.
Interesting. Yeah. Storing it alone would be a logistical nightmare, to be sure, right? So you mentioned something earlier, curb management. What does that mean?
Well, curb management is how are you going to manage your curb? How are you going to control the flow of the traffic, sort of like what Automotus is doing? There's also another company that I spoke with, a company that's based up in Canada called Curb IQ. What they are doing to manage the curb is they are literally going out to curbs. They are going out to blocks. They're doing this in various parts of Los Angeles, also taking pictures of signs and then mapping it. And then they're providing these digital maps to like delivery driver services. So let's just say that you're pulling up to a curb and you've got to like drop off your McDonald's package to whoever it is who ordered that, but you don't know where to pull over. Overlaid on your navigation system would be like, this is where you can legally pull over safely and not get a ticket, because that's another issue with these things, is that it's the individual driver that gets penalized for not parking properly, and they're hoping to shift some of the burden onto the companies, you know? So
curb your enthusiasm. I can't. Oh, this sounds super cool. Sue Carpenter, thank you for bringing Curbivore and all that great info back to us.
You are welcome.